I messaged you a week ago. I was quite excited to, yeah, I haven't been like really excited about a movie for a while, but I watched the
Same.
Joker. Yeah, I watched the Joker too, and we both liked the first movie. I mean, that was impactful. And I think what made me excited about this particular movie is, first of all, like I was really surprised that it got horrible reviews. So that's the first thing I heard. It's like not seen some of the websites that I kind of tend to trust with their reviews, and it was getting like 33%, and an average film normally gets like 60 or 70. So it's like, huh, what's going on? How can it be that bad? It's like a B movie, like horrible. So that shocked me first of all, but then something in the energy around it, I was like a bit suspicious of why it was getting such a low. Yeah. So then I watched it, and I really liked it. I was really impacted by it on multiple levels, and so I went back in and looked at like what are the critics actually saying. And then when I heard what they were saying, I was like, because sometimes critics do kind of wake me up to something in a movie, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't see that. I think they're right. That is a problem. And but in this one, it was like I was like gobsmacked by what they were saying. I was like, it seems so disconnected from the experience I had. Um, and so yeah, I shared that with you, and then yeah, you also had quite a an impact. So thought we could just like yeah, riff on that and just share like what it is. We yeah, like a quicker one, and maybe we'll do a deeper analysis another time. But yeah. So yeah, what do you want to say something off right off the bat?
Yeah, it feels good just to share how much we both loved it and to speak to why a little bit, especially with the critics being so bad. Uh, it was a little similar with Matrix 4. Like the first time I watched it, because the critics had been so bad, like it influenced me and I thought like, oh, it's all right, but not. And then the second time I watched it, I was like, this is genius. Like what?
Yeah.
And I'm not as convinced with Matrix 4 as I am with Joker 2 because I was blown away by it. I was blown away by the first one and I was blown away by this one. And yes, so touched by it. And the fact that it's so different and so original and different from the first one, I love. Um, and I do think it, like the way the reviews are, I think it captures the energy of him letting go of the Joker, which is kind of what happens with the. I hope this doesn't spoil it for people, but with what happens at the end, it's
Well,
like there's
spoiler
this,
alerts. Let's just totally speak about it.
yeah. Well,
People can watch it first. Yeah.
with him dying at the end, and with him letting go of the Joker character and just being his more vulnerable self, there's a loss. There's a loss of the alter ego. There's a loss of the power that wants to fight back. There's a loss of what we love about the Joker archetype, which, especially in the first movie, it was easy to be on his side even when he was killing people. It's like, no wonder he's killing people. He's been treated like absolute shit all his life long. And finally, he's taking a stand for himself and he's doing it with vengeance. And, like, of course, you're on side with that. But then in this movie, you still get on side with that, but then he actually lets it go, which feels like wisdom. It feels like a higher truth that he lets that go. And then in the movie, people don't like that. Everyone leaves him. It's like disastrous. And all the people that were supporting him are like, no, they don't want that. And they keep on fighting his fight, even though he's let it go. And it feels a bit like that with the reviewers that they're like, they don't want to let that go. And I can understand that
Mm.
because it's a it's a potent and important archetype, but his vulnerability and the tragedy of it, like, and that's what I heard another reviewer say is like, yeah, it's just too dark, it's just too tragic. Whereas for me, it's like it captures the human tragedy so powerfully on so many levels that that's what makes it hopeful to me. It's like we're bringing light to that. So as dark as it is and as like painful as it was to watch, I was filled with energy and hope from it.
Yeah, well, the my take on the first film, why that was powerful. I mean, in the superhero genre, you don't expect to, yeah, get a film that's about the bad guy, first of all, but then the the journey with it, it's not necessarily like in my experience, it wasn't necessarily that I was kind of on his side that he should murder, but there was like a pleasure in that he stood up for himself and that he was being so victimized, and then and some dark pleasure around the level of like the revenge, but then at the same time disturbed by it, very disturbed. And
Yeah.
in that disturbance, I felt the first film gave me a transmission of what it can be like to be that traumatized. I mean, the level of trauma he experienced with his mother is so brutal, and that poverty he was in, and just the whole thing was like disturbing. And actually, the film managed to, in its craziness, transmit that. So after watching the film, I was like in that experience. Like I feel like I could empathize with that kind of horrible deprivation. And at the same time, there was this, I was also a bit disturbed though by the level of support he would get. And because it was
Right.
like it's a kind of weird, like rebellion, kind of revolutionary energy that's coming up, which I also didn't trust. It was also weird. It left me a bit, yeah, destabilized as well. Like, do I like, do I want to challenge that, or like what's going on here? And it left me, that was my main thing with the first film, like what's going on here actually. There was like a, I think there was a subtle way he was leaving that open. And then in the second film, it's just so surprising, the whole thing of what it is. Like the fact that it's a musical and it's a law, that's such a another brave thing to do. I felt like, and I enjoyed the, I mean, I thought Lady Gaga was incredible, like in that role. So the, and in my sense, like powerful films always have the feminine and the masculine characters like in a dynamic, and the feminine often calls to the higher in the masculine, but in this case it's the higher shadow, and she plays the shadow feminine so well, that kind of setting fire to the piano like as if like to get what she wants, and the way she was playing it cool, and the seductiveness, and I'm with you, and as if it's real love, but it's also like you can't, she's lying, and it's so well. And I've met women like that in my life, and I was just seduced by them, and it's like hitting me in that level. But the music's powerful. I find a lot of critics were like, "Oh, the songs didn't further the narrative," but for me, the songs they chose were perfect for or they were communicating something.
Exactly. Can I just speak to that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you're more of a fan of musicals than me. Like I've never been a fan of musicals, but for this, it felt like this is the characters at like where they struggle to express themselves. I mean, the Joker hasn't been allowed to express himself at all, and it's the music is a way for him to actually express. And it, so for me, it just felt like more conversation in a way, or like more character development coming through
yeah.
the.
And it was also because if you imagine this guy, he's like so traumatized already. He has this experience where he kills people, uh, part of a fantasy kind of alter ego. And then he goes into prison, and he's obviously broken in the beginning. They've broke him, and the guards are kind of ridiculing him again because he's back into like disempowered. They keep asking him, where's his joke? But in another way, they're connecting with him as well. It's complex as well, that relationship. But
All
he's,
complex relationships, but
yeah, so he's kind of beaten again. So it's no wonder now that his fantasy life is more extreme. And that's the
right,
musical. So it's like it's
exactly,
even more disconnected actually from
right.
what's real. He's, there's a scene where he's in the prison, and they're kind of making fun of him, and there's a TV on, and it's not a nice atmosphere, and suddenly he's singing to them all, and everyone's loving his song. So, but then the film's like so clever in the way his singing's kind of nice, but not as well.
Exactly. It's
And
more human. Yeah.
it's kind of beautiful, but it's also a bit disturbing, and so you can't kind of get. And that for me is the transmission of that kind of consciousness,
Exactly.
and it's giving us that experience with him, and it's still he still seems to bring us along with him on his. I mean, it's all about his perspective.
Right.
So that transmission for me was powerful, and then the the court scene again, they said it was a lot of them said it was a lifeless thing, and they abandoned what the first movie was about, and there was this idea that he was so resentful as a director that he had to make the second film, that he wanted to pull down everything he did, and he wanted to stick his fingers up to the. I didn't get that at all. I thought he was challenging them again, and like trying to do his best to like, what is the
Earnestly.
progression of this character?
Yeah, exactly.
And he was deadly honest, because at the first film, the disturbing thing was, yes, we want him to come out. There is something seductive about the Joker that you love, but you also want the justice. And in the end, he tackled it in quite a sophisticated way that, when he started to come out in that courtroom, I got that aliveness again, because it's like, is he going to turn this around? Is he going to galvanize people, and he's going to escape? And are they going to go off on this crazy, like, anti-hero Bonnie and Clyde like adventure? So that there was some aliveness about that, but he tackled it head on. It was like, especially when the small guy comes on, that was
Oh, good.
actually had a connection with him, and actually you see him touch him, and then he goes into a fantasy because he can't handle it.
Right.
It's like there's actually
Right.
some connection. So it's actually he's getting touched each time into the, like, that actually I did this, I murdered people, and yet there's this big larger than life character that brings this woman towards me who's amazing, and these
Yeah.
people follow me.
I hadn't made that link, but because that's where you can just see that where he's creating more tragedy as the Joker in the courtroom, like he's standing up for himself, but he's the way he was with that little guy and the Joker was the only person who was nice to him. So you feel where he's creating more suffering. I didn't realize
Yeah.
that then he goes into a musical in relation to that, and then that makes
And
him come back like, I'm going to tell the truth.
yeah. And also the woman from the first film that touches his heart, um, she is in the second, and she gets questioned, and then it comes out how his mother really treated him in more detail, and he
Right.
goes into a violent fantasy of that, and he's
Yeah.
like whacking people with mallets, and like, so it's it's like you see him be touched by his pain and the way he's escaping into the fantasy, and the Joker to combat that. So then I mean, so the courtrooms, it's, for me it was exciting to see, is he going to actually, the power of the Joker is actually going to somehow win this case, or it's going to do something. But then, yeah, the truth is, yeah, that, well, he gets, well, that's also complex in the film as well, where it's a it's also painful that he gets kind of raped and abused again, and then he comes back, and that's when he kind of comes out.
No,
So
I
there
think
is
he came out before that.
I
I
thought
think,
it was like that was a big part of it, that the because he first of all, like, oh yeah, he first of all just names the guards, and then they take revenge, and then they rape him, and I think it's after that then he just comes out as Arthur Fleck rather than the Joker. And so it's a bit painful that he's again been abused, and so is he being more authentic, or is he just giving up? But either way, it's like it's more true.
Yeah, well, my interpretation was so he lets go of the alter ego and he starts being more vulnerable in the truth, and then the environment absolutely fucks him. And that's the
Yeah, well,
darkness. So the guards literally fuck him. His woman has got no time for him. Like the court case goes against him. So it's like in a way it's the Jesus Christ. Like everything's going against him, but he's still actually showing up. And then he
mm,
gets killed. But yeah, this is the other twist. So the last 40 minutes of the movie for me, I was so on the edge of my seat, and I was like, this is. And after the court case gets blown up, and he's in the cars, he's in the street scene, and it's street scene a bit like the Nolan Dark Knight movies. And I suddenly get it suddenly connects me to the other movies, to the past movies, and like how powerful Batman archetype is and the villains, and how much I love it. But I didn't realize the person who killed him at the end like cuts his mouth, and like so that's the connection to the real
mm,
Joker who connects to those movies. And that was the bit when I left the cinema, I wasn't quite happy with the ending because it's like, oh, but the Joker's gone now. And but then when I made that link, it was perfect. It's like, wow,
mm.
what a genius this whole thing. And it does capture the tragedy of everything around him.
Yeah, yeah. That ending is, I'm still kind of working with that, but it's like the fact that that guy was, he was, his look was already like he had the Joker or even the Riddler kind of look to him all the way through the film when that character came in and when he murders him. Yeah, it definitely leaves you in the unknown and like or like there's a depth that comes through that and a pain for Arthur Fleck because in the end he wasn't the Joker like actually and maybe that guy is the real Joker but he did embody him for a while and yeah just the whole pain the whole pain of his life and what how well that is acted by what's his name
Joaquin Phoenix.
yeah. Yeah, so well, that's a good snapshot of, and yeah, let's finish it there. Thanks for that, John.
Thanks.
You've got it